Hello to the Polar Research Board. What a great opportunity. Thank you for asking me to give my perspective on the last IPY and maybe what we gained from that. And I'm sitting here in Bethel, Alaska, on my way to Nunavik Island in the Bering Sea to continue the research we're doing out there. So um, first of all, what did we learn from the last IPY? I think most importantly on my list is science diplomacy really works, and that we can have these shared values across the polar regions that bring countries together and allow a country to collaborate with others, scientists to scientists, to do things we can't otherwise do, that one country can't explore on its own, and is best done as a multinational effort. And so I think good science brings good friends, and I think and lasting value to those relationships. So it really allows us to think big. So science diplomacy is really key. And I think in this current political climate, it couldn't be more important. It really requires us to kind of push through. We're going to have to maintain an optimistic view coming in the next few years as we plan. And I think that we need to think about powering through in our planning for this. Another perspective I wanted to provide is a legacy that we have an opportunity to think about. You know, in 2027 and 2009, on the last IPY, we didn't really think about what would people think about us in 2057 because it's so far away. And, you know, I was 54. There's no way I'm going to be around when I'm 102. So that's not something we thought about. What would the legacy looking back on the IPY? But, you know, we have an opportunity here in 2032 to do something together with other nations so that in 2057, in those next 25 years, the young people today will be in their 50s and 60s, and they're going to want to look back and have that legacy. And I'm hoping that we're looking at a cleaner world, we're looking at an energy transition, but we have to realize even in 2032, we may face the first really seasonally open Arctic Ocean, and it may even be worse by 2057. So I think we need to think about the opportunity for legacy that we did not think about in the past. But what did we accomplish? There's so many things. Excuse me, I'm having coffee here this morning. Bob Binchandler and I had an opportunity to edit with the science community a lot of those accomplishments in the Lessons and Legacies document. And a couple key things, like simple things to the public, that what happens in the Arctic or the polar regions doesn't stay in the polar regions. And I think we really hammered that home with education. We expanded all the different capacities, the research tools we were using, and even the number of polar nations increased in the last IPY. And we provided a real platform for educators in new ways. And of course, who can forget the Polar Palooza? We also developed some of the first really serious long records from both the Antarctic and the Arctic regions that showed about bipolar dynamics over the last few million years. That was and the realization that there were super interglacials in the high Arctic that corresponded with major deglaciations in the Antarctic and also with Greenland. And so that wake-up call to these extremely warm conditions recorded in both poles was real eye-opener for that time. Other accomplishments that I had on my high list was the observation networks, SAON, and all of the observation networks that were developed together. And I think this is also, if I remember, a serious time when we really started to appreciate the volume of carbon in the permafrost. This was also something that came together. And the last point I'll just make from my perspective is also that we started to see the real freshening of the Arctic and the documentation that we were really changing the ecosystem of the Arctic in new ways. And of course, now all these years later, we see even how much more that's changed. So I think Uh, looking back, I um I am most proud of the fact of all of the international collaborations. And that couldn't be more important than ever right now. And that's again, um, I think let's learn from all of that in the IPY, the last IPY, and really think about what we can do in the next IPY. So anyway, all the best to all of you. And I encourage you to have a great meeting. Thank you.